I hope you remember all about the cybernetic model of the viable system, because this model deeply underlies the story I want to tell you now. We shan't see the model again, so let's take a quick rehearsal of it. Here were the parts of the organization, which I called Systems 1, and you remember about their cybernetic interaction with the outside world. Those systems will go into oscillation, we said, unless there is a System 2, which is this, intended precisely to damp that oscillation. Then we have our first corporate management level, the total organization management, dealing with the inside of the system, right here and now. And in contrast to that, System 4, dealing with the future and the outside. And then the task of top management, right up there, System 5, perceived as mainly being about monitoring the homeostat that connects 3 and 4. That's how it was. Now, the story that I want to tell you began in 1971, in the middle of the year. I had been going around using this model that I have explained to you in big companies, in agencies, in all sorts of places. And then I suddenly got a letter which very much changed my life. It was from the technical general manager of the State Planning Board of Chile. Remember, 1971, President Allende was in office. He remarked in this letter that he had studied all my works, he had collected a team of scientists together, and would I please come and take it over? I could hardly believe it, as you can imagine. But this was to start me on a journey which made me travel 8,000 miles over and over and over again. I was commuting between London and Santiago for 2 years. While that model of the viable system's in your mind, let me tell you what happened when I first explained it to President Allende himself. Allende was a doctor, a medical doctor, as you may know. And therefore, it was very easy to explain the model to him in terms of neurocybernetics as the way of controlling the body. And then I went into the business of controlling the state. And so I said to him, let us suppose that these elements of the state are the big departments of state, like the foreign affairs and the economy and home affairs, so on. And then we'll have those, and the following things will happen, and then we must have a System 2, and I built it up on a piece of paper lying on the table between us. Then a System 3 and a System 4, and I got that far. And then I got to System 5, and I drew a big histrionic breath, and I said, I was going to say, this compañero presidente is you. Before I could say it, he suddenly smiled very broadly, and he said, ah, System 5, at last, the people. That was a pretty powerful thing to happen. It had a very big influence on me. I can't go into that aspect, the political aspect in this program. It's not what it's about. But I'm sure you'll bear in mind that I don't have to go and work in places where I don't want to be. What happened when I got to Chile and took over this team? Let us look at a little diagram to show how I set about things. Politics, yes indeed. Politics is the essence of this. Although I've said I'm not going to discuss the politics, obviously essential. Cybernetics essential, that's what I'd gone to do. And somehow we had to make a political and cybernetic analysis and bring it together. Now you'll see that I have written there recursive model, and not just model of the viable system, although that's what it was. And I want to explain what this idea of recursion is all about. If there is such a thing as a valid cybernetic model of a viable system, then you will expect it to operate wherever you have a viable system. One of the things you notice as you look around is that every viable system has parts, that's the Systems 1, which are themselves viable, and that same viable system with those viable parts is itself part of another viable system, This is what the idea of recursion says. Now, recursion is a mathematical word, and technically I use it in a mathematical sense. But the explanation I've just given is quite enough for our purposes, that inside every viable system we shall find another. So you see, I set out to model Chile in terms of its society, of which the parts are easily identifiable in big chunks, as I said, foreign affairs, for instance, internal affairs, for instance, and then recursively to model each of those chunks and so on down. We analyzed both society and the economy. Now, that's a bit lopsided, but that's how it was, because after all, the government is about controlling society. But Chile at that time was very much about the control of the economy, and that's why the economy got such emphasis. And what I'm going to be talking about today is primarily about the economy. At the moment, I'm giving you the picture. Let's look at the next slide. The recursive model, how do we apply it? Just look at that mess on the screen. Under society, first of all, I designed those S principles there. There were 5 of them, roughly relating to the 5 levels of the viable system, where I tried to express in human terms what the cybernetic understanding of society is about, with a view to propagating this knowledge among the people through booklets, through songs, through posters, as you see it written there. That was a lot of fun. I got into very close friendship with a number of the leading Chilean singers, guitarists, songwriters, and I even wrote songs myself about cybernetics, would you believe? And that's how we tried to get that side of things going. We wanted to use radio, as you see. We wanted to use slogans because the Chileans were very aware of the role that these had played in the Cuban government. And then I come over to the right-hand side, and you see that word cyber synergy under the heading economy. Well, this is the project I'm discussing now. This was the project to use the viable system model in order to create a synergy, that is, a drawing together and explosion of potential throughout the economy. This had been, by this point, very largely nationalized, as you probably remember. We had at least 200 of the major firms accounting for more than 60% of the whole national economy under the control of this organization I mentioned, the State Planning Organization. And so we wanted to use these media to promote our project of cyber synergy, to use film, to use television, to use VTR. We never got that far, although we had plans well advanced. And then to close the loop, you see that word algedonic meters. I don't think that I had time in the last program to tell you about algedonics. Algedonics means pleasure and pain. And really, the intention of that loop at the bottom of the diagram was entirely to indicate that we had to get a response from the people to everything we were doing, and we made some very profound plans to achieve that. Again, not part of this story and not completed. 2 years I'm talking about, and I think you'll find that we did quite a lot in 2 years.